It was a crisp morning in Rolling Hills, Louisiana. The air hung heavy with the damp promise of an afternoon storm. But the schoolyard buzzed with the usual pre-bell energy. Teenagers shuffled through the gates. Backpacks slung over shoulders. Conversations a mix of whispered secrets and laughter. Among them was 15-year-old Devin Carter. Walking alone with a quiet purpose. His red backpack a little too worn for the affluence of the neighborhood. Devin wasn't one to stand out. He didn't draw attention in class. Didn't speak up much. And avoided trouble with a careful precision taught by necessity. But that morning, trouble found him anyway. The school resource officer, Mark Daniels, leaned against the chain-link fence. His presence a casual but constant shadow over the students. A call crackled over his radio. The static barely audible. But it was enough to draw his gaze. He watched Devin for a moment. Then stepped forward. A lazy smirk spreading across his face. "Hey, kid," Daniels called out. His voice sharp against the background noise. Devin stopped mid-step. Clutching the strap of his backpack. "That bag yours?" The question hung in the air. Too loud and too pointed. A few students paused. Their conversations trailing off. Devin turned slowly. His heart quickening. "Yes, sir," he said. His voice barely audible. "It's mine." Daniels walked closer. Swinging the radio back onto his belt. "Mind if I take a look?" he asked. Though it wasn't a question. He was already reaching for the bag. His fingers curling around the strap. Devin's grip tightened. But he let the bag go. Resistance wasn't an option, not here. Not now. The officer opened the zipper with deliberate slowness. Pulling out each item as if revealing contraband. A battered binder. A pencil pouch. A library book with dog-eared pages. Each one landed on the pavement with a soft thud. A sound that seemed louder than it should have been. Around them, the small crowd grew. Whispers passed between students like a quiet wind. Carrying nervous curiosity and faint amusement. Devin stood frozen. His hands clenched at his sides. Daniels leaned closer. His voice dropping to a mockery-laden murmur. "Doesn't seem like much," he said. Lifting the lunchbox from the bag. He opened it with a flourish. Holding up a sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Peanut butter and jelly. Real high class. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. Devin's face burned. He looked down at the ground. Wishing he could disappear into it. "It's mine," he said again. His voice firmer this time. "Please." Daniels straightened. Holding the lunchbox just out of reach. "You don't look like someone who can afford this," he said. Loud enough for everyone to hear. Devin flinched at the words. But he didn't reply. He knew better. Leave him alone. The voice was soft. Almost hesitant. Coming from somewhere in the crowd. A girl. Maybe. Devin didn't look to see who it was. Daniels didn't seem to hear or care. His attention remained fixed on Devin. "You've got a lot to learn about respect," Daniels said. Dropping the lunchbox back into the bag without care. He stepped forward. Planting his boot on the notebook that lay on the ground. The sound of pages crumpling under leather sent a shiver up Devin's spine. "Pick it up," Daniels said. His tone cold. Devin hesitated. Then crouched down. Trembling hands reaching for the notebook. The weight of dozens of eyes pressed down on him. Each one a reminder of how small he felt. It wasn't until a new voice cut through the murmurs that the moment shifted. This voice was different, steady. Calm. but firm. "Officer," it said. Low and deliberate. "What exactly are you doing with my son's belongings?" Daniels froze. The smirk slid from his face as he turned, finding himself face to face with a man whose presence commanded attention. Ethan Carter wasn't a tall man, but he stood with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen and endured more than most. His voice carried the weight of someone used to giving orders and expecting them to be followed. Daniels tried to muster an explanation, but his words stumbled out in fragments. "There was a report, suspicious behavior." "Suspicious behavior?" Ethan interrupted, his tone sharpening. "You mean my son walking to school with his lunch and his books?" The crowd had grown silent now. Phones raised. Every moment captured. Daniels glanced around, his confidence unraveling under the scrutiny. Ethan stepped closer, his voice lowering. "You've humiliated a child in front of his peers. You've made him feel small. And for what? Because you could." Devin stayed where he was, crouched on the ground, his notebook cradled in his hands. He looked up at his father, at the calm fury in his eyes. And for the first time that morning, he felt something other than shame. He felt seen, protected. The scene dissolved slowly after that. Daniels retreating with mumbled excuses, the crowd dispersing with hushed conversations. But the tension lingered, heavy and unspoken, as Devin and Ethan walked to the car in silence. Later, at home, Devin sat at the kitchen table while Ethan paced the room, his phone lighting up with calls from neighbors and friends. The video of the incident was already spreading, a spark igniting something larger than either of them could have anticipated. Ethan paused, his voice calm but firm as he spoke to his son. "This isn't over," he said. "Not for him. Not for us. But we'll face it together." Devin nodded, though the weight of the morning still pressed on his shoulders. He didn't know what would come next. But for now, he found comfort in his father's certainty. The house was quiet that evening, the kind of silence that pressed down like a heavy blanket. Devin Carter sat at the kitchen table, the remnants of his homework spread before him, though he hadn't written a single word. His pencil lay untouched, his gaze fixed on a spot just beyond the window, where the fading light turned the sky a muted orange. In the next room, his father's voice cut through the stillness, low but unyielding. Ethan was on the phone again, speaking in clipped tones, the kind he used when he was holding back anger. Devin didn't need to hear the words to know what the conversation was about. The incident at the school had already begun to ripple outward, like a pebble dropped in a still pond. By the time they had arrived home, the video was everywhere, shared on social media, whispered about in group chats, dissected in a way that made Devin feel like he wasn't a person but a case study. He had seen it once. The shaky footage of Officer Daniels rifling through his backpack, his own face flushed and tear-streaked. That was enough. He couldn't watch it again. Ethan stepped into the kitchen, his phone still in his hand. He looked at his son for a long moment, his expression unreadable, before setting the phone down on the counter. "How's the homework coming?" he asked, though the question felt more like a placeholder, a way to fill the space between them. Devin shrugged. "I'm trying." Ethan nodded and pulled out a chair, sitting across from him. The quiet stretched again, heavier this time, until Ethan finally broke it. "I've been getting calls all evening," he said. "Parents, teachers, people in the community. They're angry." Devin shifted in his seat. "Angry about what happened?" Ethan tilted his head. His gaze steady. Angry about what's been happening. This wasn't the first time. Devon. Not for him. And not for others. Devon looked down at his notebook. His fingers tracing the edge of the paper. He didn't know how to respond to that. He didn't want to think about the other kids who might have gone through something similar. Who hadn't had someone to step in. They're calling for accountability. Ethan continued. They want answers. And they're not going to let this go. There was a pause. And then he added. Neither am I. Devon glanced up. Meeting his father's eyes. Ethan's expression was calm. But there was a fire beneath it. A resolve that made Devon feel both reassured and uneasy. He had always admired his father's strength. But he wasn't sure he wanted to be at the center of whatever storm was brewing. Underscore 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 underscore. The next morning. The air at school was thick with tension. Devon felt at the moment he stepped through the gates. The usual hum of conversations seemed quieter. Subdued. A few students looked at him with shy smiles or murmured quick words of encouragement. But most avoided his gaze altogether. He couldn't blame them. When he reached his locker, he found Marcus standing there. Waiting for him. Marcus was one of the few friends Devon had. A quiet boy with a talent for blending into the background. Hey. Marcus said. His voice low. You doing okay? Devon nodded. Though it felt like a lie. Yeah. I guess. Marcus hesitated. Then added. My mom saw the video. She said your dad's a hero for standing up to that cop. Devon let out a short, humorless laugh. Yeah. Well. I don't feel like a hero. They didn't say much else. Marcus stayed close as they walked to class. A silent shield against the stares that followed Devon through the halls. It wasn't just the students watching him, even some of the teachers seemed different. Their smiles a little too wide. Their words a little too careful. Devon could feel the weight of their pity. And it made his skin crawl. By lunchtime, the whispers had grown louder. Students huddled in groups. Their phones lighting up with notifications. The video had reached the local news. And rumors were already spreading about what might happen next. Devon didn't eat much. His appetite drowned out by the buzz of speculation around him. When the bell rang, he made his way to the principal's office, where an assembly had been called. The auditorium was packed. Every seat filled with students, teachers, and even a few parents who had insisted on attending. Devon sat near the back, his shoulders hunched, trying to make himself as small as possible. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, stood on the stage. His voice measured as he addressed the room. What happened yesterday was unacceptable, he said. We are taking this matter very seriously. Officer Daniels has been placed on administrative leave while an investigation is conducted. The words hung in the air, heavy with formality. Devon watched as heads nodded, as murmurs of approval rippled through the crowd. But he didn't feel reassured. The announcement felt hollow. Like a bandage placed over a wound that was still bleeding. After the assembly, Devon slipped out quietly, avoiding the small clusters of students lingering in the halls. He just wanted to go home, to escape the constant reminders of what had happened. But as he stepped outside, he saw his father waiting for him by the car. his posture as steady and unshakable as ever. Ethan didn't say anything as Devon climbed into the passenger seat. He simply placed a hand on his son's shoulder. A gesture of quiet solidarity. Devon leaned back against the seat, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, Ethan's phone buzzed again. Another call. Another conversation about what needed to happen next. Devon watched his father, his jaw tight with determination, and felt a flicker of something he couldn't quite name. Hope. Maybe. Or something close to it. It wasn't much. But for now, it was enough. The filing cabinet in Ethan Carter's study had always been organized with military precision. Each folder was labeled neatly, its contents tucked away in perfect order. But that morning, the cabinet was open. Papers spread across the desk. The normally pristine room cluttered with the weight of an unfolding battle. Ethan sat in the center of it all, his reading glasses perched on the bridge of his nose. A pen moving steadily across a legal pad. The sound of the pen scratching against the paper filled the room, punctuated only by the occasional rustle as he flipped through another document. Devon lingered in the doorway, hesitant. He wasn't used to seeing his father like this, so focused, so absorbed. Ethan looked up after a moment, sensing his son's presence. "Morning," he said, his voice calm. He gestured to the chair across from him. "Come in." Devon sat down slowly, his hands fidgeting in his lap. The events of the past 2 days had left him raw, his emotions oscillating between anger, shame, and something else he couldn't quite name. But his father's steady presence had become an anchor, grounding him in a way he didn't fully understand. "What's all this?" Devon asked, nodding toward the papers. Ethan leaned back in his chair, removing his glasses. "This," he said, "is the start of something bigger." Devon frowned. "You mean the complaint?" "That's part of it," Ethan replied. "But it's not just about what happened to you. This is about what's been happening to you. To other kids. To anyone who's ever been treated like less than they are because of how they look." The words settled heavily between them. Devon glanced at the papers on the desk, his eyes catching on phrases like excessive force and systemic misconduct. He swallowed hard. "Do you really think it'll make a difference?" Ethan's gaze softened. "It has to start somewhere. People like Daniels get away with what they do because no one holds them accountable. If we don't push back, nothing changes." Underscore 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 underscore. At school, the atmosphere had shifted. Whispers followed Devon through the hallways. A constant undercurrent of curiosity and speculation. Some students offered quiet words of support, their voices hushed as though afraid of drawing attention. Others avoided him altogether, their eyes sliding away when he passed. During lunch, Marcus found him sitting alone at a table near the back of the cafeteria. His friend dropped into the seat across from him, his tray clattering onto the table. "You good?" Marcus asked, his tone casual but his expression concerned. Devon shrugged. "I guess." Marcus leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "I heard the videos all over the news now. My mom says people are calling the school, demanding answers." Devon nodded but didn't respond. He'd seen the video again that morning, this time on a local news segment. Watching himself in that moment standing frozen as Officer Daniels rifled through his belongings had brought back the flood of emotions he had tried to suppress. Humiliation. Helplessness. Anger. But there was something else. Too. A quiet hope that maybe, just maybe, this time would be different. Underscore 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 underscore. By the end of the day, the tension reached a boiling point. The principal, Mr. Hargrove, announced an impromptu school assembly. His voice echoing through the PA system. Devon felt the weight of every eye on him as he made his way to the auditorium. Marcus trailing silently at his side. The room buzzed with subdued chatter as students and teachers filled the seats. Parents lined the back wall. Their arms crossed. Their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Devon sat near the edge of a row. His body tense. As Mr. Hargrove stepped onto the stage. What happened earlier this week has brought a lot of attention to our school, the principal began. His tone measured. And I want to assure you all that we are taking this matter very seriously. Officer Daniels has been placed on administrative leave while the investigation is underway. The words were met with murmurs from the crowd. A ripple of reactions that ranged from approval to skepticism. Devon stared at his hands. The announcement ringing hollow in his ears. Administrative leave didn't feel like accountability. It felt like an excuse. Mr. Hargrove continued. His voice steady but devoid of real emotion. We are committed to fostering a safe and inclusive environment for all of our students. I encourage anyone with concerns to come forward and speak with me or a member of the faculty. Devon glanced around the room. Some students nodded. Their faces solemn. While others looked bored. Already tuning out the speech. For Devon. The words felt like a thin layer of paint over a crack in the wall, an attempt to cover something deeper. Something that couldn't be fixed so easily. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, Ethan hosted a meeting at the community center. Inviting parents, students, and local activists to share their stories. The room was small but packed. The energy palpable. Devon sat near the back. Listening as one by one. People stepped forward to speak. A mother described how her son had been pulled over 3 times in the past month for no apparent reason. A former student recounted an incident with another officer at the same school. Each story was different. But the thread running through them was the same: a quiet, pervasive injustice that had gone unchecked for too long. When the meeting ended, Ethan stood at the front of the room. His voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. This isn't just about one incident, he said. This is about a system that needs to change. And that change starts with us. Devon watched as heads nodded. As people exchanged contact information and made plans to attend the next meeting. For the first time since the ordeal began, he felt a flicker of something close to hope. Maybe his father was right. Maybe this was the start of something bigger. As they walked home together, the air cool against his skin, Devon looked up at his father. "Do you really think it'll work?" he asked. Ethan didn't answer right away. He looked straight ahead. His expression thoughtful. "Change doesn't come easy," he said finally. "But if we don't try, It'll never come at all. Devon nodded. The weight on his chest easing just slightly. It wasn't much. But it was a start. And for now. That was enough. The town hall was a modest building. Its brick facade weathered by years of southern heat and rain. That evening. It was filled beyond capacity. With rows of folding chairs packed tightly together and a line of people standing against the walls. The faint hum of the overhead lights mixed with the low murmur of voices. The air charged with anticipation. Ethan Carter stood at the front. His posture steady. His presence commanding without effort. Devon sat near the back. Pressed between Marcus and a woman he didn't know. Her arms crossed tightly over her chest. He had never been in a room like this before, so alive with quiet determination. It was overwhelming and oddly comforting at the same time. Ethan raised a hand. And the room fell silent. He glanced down at his notes but didn't look at them long. His voice carried clearly. Each word deliberate. "We're here tonight because of what happened to my son," he began. "But this isn't just about Devon. It's about a pattern, a system that allows people in power to act without accountability." A ripple of murmurs moved through the crowd. Heads nodded in agreement. Devon watched as his father's gaze swept the room. His tone unwavering. "We all know someone who's been affected. A neighbor. A coworker. A child. And for too long. We've been told to accept it as just the way things are. Well. I'm here to say that it doesn't have to be." For a moment. The room was still. The weight of his words settling over the crowd. Then the first speaker stepped forward. A man in his 40s with a quiet demeanor and a nervous energy. "My daughter," he said. His voice shaking slightly. "She's in 7th grade. Last month. She was stopped in the hallway by an officer. She told me he searched her backpack. Said he was just checking. She didn't understand why he singled her out. And neither do I." The man's words hung in the air. Resonating with unspoken truths. One by one. Others followed. A mother talked about her teenage son being pulled over while riding his bike. A young woman described an encounter at the grocery store where her receipt was demanded after a routine purchase. Each story was met with murmurs of recognition. A shared understanding of an experience that was both deeply personal and painfully common. Devon listened. His chest tight. He had always known. In a vague way. That his experience wasn't unique. But hearing these stories. Laid bare in the voices of strangers. Made it feel real in a way he hadn't expected. Underscore 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 underscore. After the meeting, the crowd lingered. Clusters of people exchanging phone numbers and promises to stay in touch. Devon stayed near the back. Unsure where he fit in this newfound sense of community. He felt Marcus nudge his arm. "Your dad's impressive," Marcus said. His voice low. Devon nodded but didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on Ethan, who was deep in conversation with a group of parents. His father seemed larger than life in that moment. His calm presence a source of reassurance for so many. When the room finally began to empty, Ethan approached Devon, resting a hand on his shoulder. "You okay?" he asked. "Yeah," Devon said. Though the word felt inadequate. It's a lot." Ethan nodded. His expression softening. "It is. But this is how change starts. By showing up. By listening. Devon didn't reply. But something in his father's words stayed with him as they walked to the car. The night was quiet. The streets lit only by the occasional glow of a street lamp. The weight of the meeting lingered in the air. But it felt different now, less like a burden and more like a responsibility. Underscore 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 underscore. The next day, the stories from the town hall began to spread. Local news outlets picked up the event, interviewing attendees and highlighting the community's demand for action. Devon watched the coverage with a mixture of pride and apprehension. His face appeared briefly on the screen. A still from the viral video that had started it all. He quickly looked away. At school, the atmosphere had shifted again. Some students approached him in the hallways. Their words tentative but genuine. "What happened to you wasn't right," one girl said. Her voice barely above a whisper. Devon thanked her. Though the interaction left him feeling exposed. Not everyone was supportive. A group of boys snickered as he walked past. Their voices carrying just loud enough for him to hear. "Guess we all need to be careful," one of them said. "Wouldn't want to end up on the news." Devon's jaw tightened. But he didn't stop walking. He focused on the words of encouragement. The quiet acts of solidarity. And reminded himself that not everyone would understand or care. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table. A stack of papers spread out before him. Devon hesitated in the doorway. Then stepped inside. Pulling out a chair across from his father. "Do you think it'll really change anything?" he asked. His voice quiet. Ethan looked up. His expression thoughtful. "Change doesn't come quickly," he said. "And it doesn't come easy. But it starts with people willing to stand up and say, 'Enough.' That's what we're doing." Devon nodded. His gaze dropping to the table. He still wasn't sure he believed it. But he wanted to. For the first time. He felt the faintest flicker of hope, not just for himself. But for everyone who had spoken up the night before. Maybe they couldn't fix everything. But they could try. And sometimes. That was enough to begin. The courthouse in Rolling Hills was an unassuming building. Its brick walls and modest facade blending into the fabric of the small Louisiana town. It stood as a symbol of justice. Though to many, it was a place where justice often felt out of reach. On this particular morning, its quiet halls buzzed with a subdued energy. A mixture of anticipation and unease. Devon sat on a wooden bench in the corridor outside the courtroom. His hands resting on his knees. His father, Ethan, stood nearby. Speaking in low tones with their lawyer. A woman named Janice Porter. Janice was a steady presence. Her voice calm and deliberate. Her words chosen with care. She had agreed to take the case almost immediately after hearing their story. Not because it was sensational but because it was necessary. The lawsuit against Officer Daniels and the Rolling Hills Police Department wasn't just about what had happened to Devon. It was about a system that allowed such behavior to thrive, a system that often left people like Devon feeling unseen and unheard. Ethan had made that clear from the beginning. Devon glanced at his father, who caught his eye and gave a small nod. It was a silent reassurance. One that Devon had come to rely on in the weeks since the incident. He wasn't sure he felt ready to face what was waiting inside the courtroom. But he trusted his father. That would have to be enough. Underscore 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 underscore. The courtroom itself was quiet. Almost solemn. As the proceedings began, the judge, a middle-aged woman with sharp eyes and a firm demeanor, called the room to order. On one side of the room sat Officer Daniels. His posture rigid. His face carefully neutral. On the other side sat Devon, Ethan, and Janice. Their presence a quiet counterpoint to Daniels' forced composure. Janice began her opening statement with a calm precision that filled the room. "This case is not just about one officer's actions," she said. Her voice steady. "It is about a pattern of behavior that has gone unchecked for far too long. My client, Devon Carter, is here today because he was humiliated and treated as a suspect not for what he did, but for who he is." Devon listened, his heart pounding quietly in his chest. Janice's words were measured, but they carried a weight that he hadn't fully understood until now. This wasn't just about him. It was about something much larger, something he was still struggling to grasp. Underscore 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 underscore. As the trial unfolded, a series of witnesses took the stand. Some were students who had been present during the incident, their testimonies painting a clear picture of what had happened that day. Others were parents and community members who shared their own experiences with the local police force, their voices tinged with frustration and fatigue. Each story added another layer to the case, highlighting a system that had failed to protect the very people it was meant to serve. Devon sat quietly through it all, his emotions swirling just beneath the surface. He felt a strange mixture of shame and pride, shame for being at the center of such a public spectacle, and pride for the courage it took for others to speak up. Officer Daniels took the stand near the end of the trial. His testimony was defensive, his words carefully chosen to deflect responsibility. "I was acting on a report of suspicious activity," he said, his tone measured but strained. "I was just doing my job." Janice's cross-examination was quiet but pointed. "And what exactly was suspicious about a 15-year-old boy walking to school with a backpack?" she asked, her voice steady. Daniels hesitated, his composure cracking just slightly. I didn't know what was in the bag," he stammered. "I was following procedure." Janice tilted her head, her gaze unwavering. "Procedure that involved dumping his belongings on the ground, pinning his notebook with your boot, and mocking the contents of his lunchbox." The room was silent, the tension palpable. Daniels didn't respond. Underscore 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 underscore. When the trial adjourned for the day, Devon and Ethan stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air. The courthouse steps were crowded with reporters, their cameras and microphones pointed toward the father and son. Janice spoke briefly, Her words measured and professional. Before guiding Devon and Ethan toward their car. Inside the quiet of the vehicle, Devon let out a long breath. "Do you think it's enough?" he asked. His voice barely above a whisper. Ethan glanced at him. His expression thoughtful. "It's a start," he said. "It won't fix everything. But it's a step in the right direction. And sometimes that's all we can do, take the next step." Devon nodded. The weight of the day settling heavily on his shoulders. He wasn't sure what the outcome would be. But for the first time, he felt a small sense of agency, a belief that his voice, and the voices of those around him, could make a difference. As they drove home, the town passed by in a blur of familiar streets and storefronts. The courthouse grew smaller in the rearview mirror. But its significance lingered. A quiet reminder that change, however slow, was possible. The courtroom was filled with a subdued hum as people shuffled into their seats. The trial was nearing its end. And the air was thick with anticipation. Reporters lined the back wall, their notebooks poised, while spectators murmured quietly among themselves. The case had drawn attention far beyond rolling hills. And the small-town courthouse now felt like the center of something larger, a conversation that had been waiting to happen for far too long. Devon sat beside his father at the plaintiff's table. His back straight and his hands folded in his lap. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on him, though he tried not to let it show. He glanced at his father, who gave him a reassuring nod. Ethan Carter's presence was steady. His calm demeanor a quiet source of strength. At the defendant's table, Officer Daniels sat with his lawyer, his face carefully blank. Devon wondered what the officer was feeling: anger, embarrassment, fear. He couldn't tell. Daniels had been a fixture in the town for years. And many in the community had viewed him as a figure of authority, if not respect. Now, that image was fraying. Piece by piece. Underscore 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 underscore. Janice Porter stood to give her closing argument. She moved to the center of the room. Her voice measured and deliberate, each word carrying weight. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," she began. "This case is not about one man's actions in isolation. It's about a pattern of behavior, a pattern that reflects a broader issue we can no longer ignore." Her eyes moved across the room, meeting the gazes of jurors, spectators, and reporters alike. Devon Carter is a 15-year-old boy. On the morning of September 14th, he was walking to school, carrying nothing more than a backpack filled with books and a lunchbox. Yet he was stopped, humiliated, and treated as a criminal. Why? She let the question hang in the air for a moment before continuing. Was it because he posed a genuine threat? Or was it because of an assumption, a bias that dictated how he was perceived before he even spoke a word? Devon shifted in his seat, his chest tightening. Janice's words were calm, almost understated. But they cut through the room with quiet precision. "This isn't just about Devon," she said, her voice softening. "It's about the countless others who have been subjected to the same treatment. Those who never had the chance to speak out. Who didn't have a video to back up their story. Today, you have the opportunity to say enough. To send a message that this kind of behavior is not acceptable, not in Rolling Hills. Not anywhere." She returned to her seat, her expression calm but resolute. Devon exhaled slowly. his hands unclenching beneath the table. Underscore 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 underscore. When Officer Daniels took the stand, his demeanor was different from the first day of the trial. The bravado he had shown during his earlier testimony had faded, replaced by a guarded defensiveness. His lawyer guided him through a series of questions, each one carefully crafted to paint his actions in the best possible light. "I was following procedure," Daniels repeated, his voice steady but strained. "I acted on a report of suspicious activity. My intention was never to humiliate anyone." When Janice stood for her cross-examination, her approach was calm, almost conversational. "Officer Daniels," she began, "can you explain what specifically was suspicious about Devin Carter that morning?" Daniels hesitated, his eyes flickering toward the jury. He was walking near the school with a bag. It looked heavy." Janice tilted her head slightly, her expression neutral. "Is carrying a heavy bag in near a school considered suspicious?" "Well, no," Daniels admitted, his voice faltering. "But we had to be cautious." Janice nodded slowly, letting the words settle before speaking again. "You also mentioned earlier that you believed you were following procedure. Can you point to any part of your department's procedure that justifies mocking a student's lunchbox or pinning his notebook to the ground with your boot?" Daniel's face reddened, and he shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "No," he said finally, his voice barely audible. The courtroom was silent, the tension palpable. Janice stepped back, her work done. Underscore 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 underscore. The closing hours of the trial felt both drawn out and fleeting. The jury deliberated for what seemed like an eternity, the courtroom emptying and filling again as everyone waited for the verdict. Devin sat with his father on a bench in the hallway, the noise of the courthouse muted around them. "You did good," Ethan said quietly, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. Devin nodded, though he wasn't sure how much he believed it. The trial had taken so much out of him emotionally, mentally, but there was also a quiet sense of purpose that he couldn't ignore. For the first time, he felt like his voice had been heard, even if he didn't know what the outcome would be. When the jury finally returned, the courtroom was silent as the verdict was read. "Guilty." The word seemed to echo in the stillness, a single syllable that carried the weight of weeks, months, years of pain and frustration. Officer Daniels sat motionless, his expression unreadable. Devin glanced at his father, who gave a small nod, his face calm but reflective. As the judge announced the police department's agreement to implement reforms, Devin felt a strange mixture of relief and exhaustion. It wasn't a perfect victory, nothing ever was, but it was a step forward. And sometimes, a step was enough to start something bigger. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, as they walked home under the soft glow of streetlights, Devin turned to his father. Do you think it'll change anything? He asked. His voice quiet. Ethan paused. His gaze thoughtful. It won't fix everything, he said. But it's a start. And sometimes, a start is all you need. Devon nodded. The cool night air brushing against his skin. He didn't know what the future held. But for the first time, he felt like it was something he could face with his father beside him. And a growing sense of quiet determination within himself. The days following the verdict were quiet in Rolling Hills. Though the quiet was deceptive. Beneath the surface, the town was grappling with a shift it couldn't yet define. Conversations were happening in living rooms, coffee shops, and church halls, some supportive, others defensive. But all impossible to avoid. The trial had forced the community to confront uncomfortable truths. Truths that had lingered in the background for years but had rarely been named so plainly. Devon sat on the front porch of his house. The wooden steps creaking faintly beneath his weight. He stared out at the street, where a breeze sent leaves skittering across the pavement. The verdict had brought a kind of closure. But it hadn't erased the memories of that morning outside the school, the humiliation. The stares. The silence of the crowd. His father stepped outside. A mug of coffee in hand. Ethan took a seat beside him. The two of them sitting in companionable silence for a few moments. The evening air was cool, carrying the faint scent of rain. "You've been quiet," Ethan said eventually. His voice low and even. Devon shrugged. "Just thinking." "About what?" Devon hesitated. Then glanced at his father. "Do you think it'll really make a difference?" "The verdict. The reforms, all of it." Ethan sipped his coffee. His expression thoughtful. "It's hard to say," he admitted. "Change doesn't happen all at once. It's slow. And sometimes it's messy. But that doesn't mean it's not worth fighting for." Devon nodded. His gaze returning to the street. He wanted to believe his father was right. The reforms announced after the trial, a commitment to retraining officers, implementing bias education, and establishing clearer accountability measures sounded promising. But he couldn't help wondering how much would actually change once the attention faded. Underscore 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 underscore. The next day, Ethan and Devon attended a community meeting at the church, where neighbors had gathered to discuss the reforms and what they meant for Rolling Hills. The room was filled with familiar faces, their expressions a mix of hope and skepticism. A few reporters lingered near the back, their presence a reminder that the story was still unfolding in the public eye. Janice Porter stood at the front, her voice calm but firm as she addressed the group. "The verdict was a step in the right direction," she said. "But it's just that, a step. Real change will take time. And it will take all of us holding the system accountable." A man in the audience raised his hand. "How do we know they'll follow through?" he asked, his tone wary. "We've heard promises before." Janice nodded. "It's a valid question. That's why community oversight is so important. These reforms need to be more than words on paper, they need to translate into action. And we need to make sure they do." Ethan spoke next, his voice steady. "This isn't just about the police department," he said. "It's about the culture of this town. The way we treat each other. The assumptions we carry with us. Those things don't change overnight. But they can change. And it starts with conversations like this." Devon listened from the back of the room, his chest tightening. He had spent so much of the trial feeling like a symbol. A representation of something larger than himself. But sitting here, surrounded by neighbors and classmates, he began to understand that his story was part of a larger tapestry, one that stretched far beyond rolling hills. Underscore 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 underscore. Later that evening, Devon found himself scrolling through social media. The images and headlines blurring together. The video of his encounter with Officer Daniels was still circulating, though the focus had shifted to the reforms and the broader implications of the case. Comments ranged from outrage to indifference, each one a reminder of how divided the world could be. He paused on a post from a student at his school. A girl he barely knew. "Proud to see our town taking steps toward justice," she had written. The words accompanied by a photo of the community meeting. It wasn't much, but it felt genuine. Devon closed the app and set his phone down. His thoughts drifting. He didn't know what the future would hold, whether the reforms would stick, whether the town would truly change. But for the first time, he felt a flicker of something he hadn't allowed himself to feel before: hope. Underscore 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 underscore. The next morning, Devon walked to school with his head held a little higher. The stares had lessened, the whispers fading into the background. A few students nodded at him in passing, their expressions warm. Marcus caught up with him near the gates, his usual easygoing grin in place. "Looks like you're famous," Marcus said, nudging him playfully. Devon rolled his eyes, but he couldn't help the small smile that crept onto his face. "Yeah. Well, I'm ready to go back to being invisible." "Not gonna happen," Marcus replied, his tone light but sincere. "People are paying attention now. That's a good thing." As they walked through the halls, Devon noticed the posters on the walls, announcements about upcoming workshops on diversity and inclusion, invitations to student-led discussions on equity. They were small things, but they felt like a start. By lunchtime, Devon found himself sitting with a group of classmates he hadn't spoken to much before. The conversation was easy, free of the tension that had hung over the school in the weeks after the trial. For the first time, he felt like just another student. That evening, as the sun set over rolling hills, Devon and Ethan sat on the porch again. The quiet between them comfortable. The neighborhood was still. The only sound the faint chirping of crickets. "Do you think it's enough?" Devon asked, breaking the silence. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "It's not about enough," he said. "It's about keeping the momentum going. Change doesn't happen in a straight line. It happens in steps. In moments. And you've helped create one of those moments." Devon considered his father's words, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He didn't have all the answers, but for the first time, he felt like he didn't need to. It wasn't the end of the story, it was the beginning. And that, he thought, was a good place to start. The morning sun bathed rolling hills in a soft, golden light, casting long shadows over the familiar streets. Devon Carter walked down the sidewalk toward the school gates, his backpack slung over one shoulder. The weight of the bag was familiar. But today, it felt lighter somehow. For the first time in weeks. He wasn't thinking about the trial, the reporters, or the endless conversations about what had happened. He was just another kid heading to class. The school looked the same as it always had, brick walls softened by creeping ivy. A flag fluttering lazily in the morning breeze. But something about it felt different. Devon couldn't quite name it. But there was a new energy in the air. An undercurrent of change that lingered just beneath the surface. As he stepped through the gates, a teacher greeted him with a nod. Her smile warm but not overly careful. A few students waved or said hello. Their voices casual. Unforced. Devon nodded back. Feeling a small, quiet sense of relief. The stares and whispers had faded. Replaced by something closer to normalcy. Underscore 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 underscore. In history class, the teacher led a discussion on civil rights movements of the past, tying them to the present in a way that felt both deliberate and natural. Devon listened closely, his thoughts drifting to the community meeting, the town hall, and the courtroom. He thought about his father's words, change doesn't happen all at once. When the teacher asked for volunteers to share their thoughts, Devon hesitated, his hand hovering over his desk. He wasn't used to speaking up. But something pushed him to raise his hand. The room grew quiet as the teacher called on him. I think, it's easy to look at the past and think we're different now, he said. His voice steady but soft. But a lot of those same problems are still here. They just look different. The teacher nodded. Her expression encouraging. And what do you think we can do about that? Devon thought for a moment. Then said. I think it starts with paying attention. To the little things. The things we don't always notice because they feel normal. If we don't notice them, we can't change them. There was a pause. Then a few students murmured in agreement. The teacher smiled. Thank you, Devon. That's a very thoughtful point. As the discussion continued, Devon felt a flicker of pride. He wasn't sure if his words had made a difference. But he was glad he'd spoken them. Underscore 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 underscore. After school, Devon met his father at the community center, where another meeting was being held. This one was smaller. Quieter, just a handful of parents, students, and local activists discussing the next steps. Janice Porter was there. Her usual calm presence reassuring. The group talked about the reforms. About holding the police department accountable. And about ways to bring more voices into the conversation. Devon listened, contributing when he felt he had something to add. It felt less daunting now. Being part of something bigger than himself. Toward the end of the meeting, Janice turned to Devon. You've been quiet, she said gently. What do you think? Devon hesitated. Then said, I think, we've started something important. But it's not just about big changes. It's about how we treat each other every day. The little things. Janice nodded. Her expression thoughtful. You're right. Change starts small. But it grows. And you've already helped it grow more than you realize. Underscore 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 underscore. That evening, Devon and Ethan sat on the porch. The familiar routine a comforting end to the day. The neighborhood was quiet. The sounds of distant crickets mingling with the rustle of leaves. Devon leaned back in his chair, letting the stillness settle over him. "Do you feel different?" Ethan asked after a while, breaking the silence. Devon thought about the question. "A little," he admitted. "I guess I feel like I'm part of something bigger now. Like what happened to me wasn't just about me." Ethan nodded, his gaze distant but thoughtful. "That's a good thing," he said. "Because it means you're paying attention. And that's how it starts." Devon smiled faintly, his thoughts drifting. He didn't know what the future would bring, whether the reforms would lead to lasting change, whether the conversations would continue, whether the community would hold on to the lessons it had learned. But he knew one thing: he was ready to be part of whatever came next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Devon felt a quiet sense of hope. It wasn't a loud or overwhelming feeling. It was small, steady, like the first light of dawn. And for the first time, he realized that was enough.